Oh, no pressure. Amber just said, I hope you're as funny as John was last week. No pressure. I have to admit, I've listened to John's jokes for like almost 20 years. I do think he's still pretty funny. And so that'll be my goal, to be as funny or funnier than John. This is kind of a lighthearted, fun series that can just give you a quick, like, whoa, okay? So the series is called How to Hug a Vampire, which is probably something you wouldn't want to do because they might bite you, /suck your blood, /whatever, okay? So the question is, how do we love people who do suck the life out of us? How do you love those people that are the hardest to love? This person might be at your work. They might be one of your neighbors. They might be one of your children or your spouse. Maybe they're sitting in your row right now. I don't know. But how do we love the people that are hard to love, that suck the life out of us? Last week, we talked about it's supposed to be the 2x4 man, and I heard John had a 2x8 because he's extreme, and so there will be no boards today. That was specifically about how to love people who are constantly judging you, okay, when maybe they need to deal with their own problems. Today, we're going to talk about how to love the one-upper, and I can admit that at times I am a one-upper, and that is probably because I love to tell stories, okay? So I'm like, oh, yeah, really? Well, get this. Or like the fisherman who's like, I caught this fish, and it's like, yeah, well, one time I caught this, and it goes back and forth, and then you don't even know it's even true any longer. We were camping just last weekend, and we are new-ish to camping. John and I tried tent camping once, and we moved out in the middle of the night. It didn't go well. Found the Motel 6, and we called that camping for the last 15 years. And so John has been talking about an actual camper. Our kids really wanted to camper. Diana said, Mommy, I don't think you understand. I really want a camper. And I was like, okay, who doesn't want a camper, right? But they're not exactly the cheapest things. They're a lot of work, can be a lot of stress. We don't have any extra money for a camper, Diana, so I am sorry. Well, out of nowhere, I ended up buying a pop-up camper, which is kind of like a starter camper, off of Facebook Marketplace for a really good deal because it didn't pop up. So I bought a trailer that I thought we could figure out how to pop up. And we did. We were successful, but it's not the way it used to pop up. It's this special thing, and John has to crawl under on his back, and I have to watch from the outside, and we have to yell back and forth to each other. It's really quite a show. But it pops up, okay? And so we have a pop-up camper. The whole family is excited, especially John. He is loving the pop-up camper. And it was time to tear it down, only for our second time. Setting up and tearing down the pop-up camper is very stressful. It doesn't matter if it's new or old. It's a stressful process. So we are in that process, and there's I don't know how this stuff works, but there's this thing that goes like this and this thing that goes like this at the trailer part, and John's doing that thing, and there's 6 boards under it, and something wasn't right, and it went chunk, and all the boards went da-da-da-da-da, and then the camper went da-da-da-da-da, and it was really we don't know what we're doing. And it was in the middle of a Saturday when the campground is full of people, and they have all settled in for the weekend, but we're pastors, so we got to leave and get ready for church tomorrow. And so people just kind of are watching, and we're trying to figure it out. So this really nice guy that we had met earlier, he comes to help us out and trying to figure out what we're doing and why the thing that was tight wasn't tight, and this thing wasn't right, and the wheel was down here, and figuring it out. But we're out of breath and a little bit nervous and scared, and who's watching? And suddenly this man walks over from his camper. And he's like, you guys need help? I was like, I think we got it. We're okay. And he's like, all right, I just saw what was happening over here. Thought maybe you needed some help. I was like, I think we're good. He's like, yeah, I had a pop-up. We spent one trip with that, and then I bought that over there. I was like, okay. So maybe you didn't notice this a $500 fixer-upper pop-up camper. That's a $30,000 camper and a $50,000 truck. We're in 2 different levels here, buddy. And so I'm just feeling bad about our little non-popping up pop-up and just get out of here. And then I was and tomorrow, last Sunday, I also gave the same message about a one-upper. And I was I didn't even ask for that. Why did you have to come over and be yeah, I tried this once, then I got that? Does it look like we can afford that? I don't think so. This is where we're at today, buddy. So sometimes there's that person, whether you ask for it or not, whether you started this conversation or not, who wants to intentionally or unintentionally one-up you. The good news is this is not what God wants for us, okay? In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4, it talks about love. Now, we all know 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is the love chapter, and often it's read at weddings, but it's not necessarily specifically about marriage. It's more about love and loving people in the church and loving people in our lives. And we need to realize that love does not boast and that love is not arrogant. And so as much as this is about how to love people who are one-uppers, maybe we need to think about some times and spaces where maybe we are the one-upper. If you're not sure, I have a little pop quiz on one-upping. The first question, there's 6 answers of how maybe you deal with one-uppers in your life, okay? So how would you finish this sentence? Having a conversation with a one-upper makes me want to, A, put my fingers in my ears and sing la la la, I can't hear you, la la la. B, walk away annoyed and just thinking that they always act this way. C, make up your own ridiculous story just to see what they will say next. That's entertaining. Point out the obvious exaggerations and make them look foolish and start an argument. Or do you listen intently and ask them to tell you other stories of their greatness? There's some really entertaining things you can do with these people who are one-uppers. We have a friend who is a self-professed one-upper because we were at church one day and this little tiny toddler fell into the corner of a wall. And he had an immediate goose egg with a slit down the middle. It was very tense, okay? And all the people were like, help, 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 trying to figure out what's wrong. He's like, oh yeah, I can one-up that. Started telling his own story. I'm like, you don't one-up a toddler with a goose egg that's bleeding in the church. I was like, he's the ultimate one-upper. There's a little YouTuber that I follow. If you don't, you probably should. She's hysterical. Her name is Mila. I don't follow hardly any YouTubers. I can't get enough of Mila. She gives us a great example of handling a one-upper. So Mila kind of hits the nail on the head, okay? And some of you are like, oh no, am I a one-upper? You probably are, okay? And so I told you, I can self-admit that at times I am Karen, okay? I may be Karen. But I really, really don't believe this is what God wants. I had somebody share with me upstairs that he was teaching a class and he was at Pendleton last week and this lady was giving him a laundry list of reasons why she didn't get her homework done and why she should be allowed to stay and take the class. And he said, I could literally one-up every single thing she said. She drove this far, I drove further. She's doing her master's, I'm doing my doctorate. He's like, everything she said, I could have one-upped and been like, and still the answer is no. He's like, but I just said, I'm sorry. He goes, I heard your voice, Danielle, saying, don't one-up her. I just sent her away politely. I said, that's probably better because she's already very upset with you and probably didn't want to hear your one-ups. And so I hope that you'll consider both of these sides of the story. How do I not be a one-upper and how do I love a one-upper? Inside of your Next Steps folder is the follow-along guide. I'd love for you to pull that out. We have notes for you to fill in today. I know the last few weeks that hasn't always been there, but there are 8 points, and you will not be able to remember them because I still have to have the notes to remember them. And so if you'll grab your follow-along guide, if you don't have one, I am sure I see Bern in the back. We have plenty in the back. If you'd like to take notes, no shame, raise your hand. If you're online, you can scribble these down. We're going to compare the 4 words of a performance-based society. I feel like one-upping very much comes out of a performance-based society. We live smack in the middle of this life. No matter where you work, no matter what you do, no matter what your education is, we all live in this rat race, performance-based society. And this is not where we want to be, but it's a lot of where the one-upping comes out of. So the first key word of a performance-based society is promoted. How many of you would like to be promoted in your job? Amen. Okay, some of you aren't raising your hand because you're like, no, I tried that, and they did pay me more, but the stress was not worth it. However, we're still seeking these levels of advancement and being rewarded for outperforming other people. Promoted is a key word that we really push. We climb a ladder to be bigger, to be better, to maybe make more, or maybe to take on more responsibility, and it's all about our performance. A second key word of a performance-based society would be impress. We dress to impress. We buy cars we can't afford to impress. We buy maybe campers we can't afford to impress. I don't know, maybe you can. I'm not judging, I'm just saying. We think that we'll be recognized if we outperform you. You may be recognized if you underperform too. But we are striving to impress other people. Nobody wants to be a one-hit wonder. Does anybody by chance, if you're a DJ, don't answer. I know we have a couple people who are DJs, but the band Los Del Rio. Does anybody know that band? It's okay. But you know their song. Does anybody know? The Macarena. We got one person who knows. You all know the Macarena, like da 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 da. You know, there's a million different little variations. It's almost at every wedding still. But we don't want to be that. We want to be the known name. We want to be somebody that's like, oh yeah, like I know that. We want to impress. A third key word would be competition. We have a very competitive society. We all live in a very competitive place day in and day out. We believe that we are a winner if we outperform. Nobody wants to be a loser. There's a loser dance on Fortnite, apparently, that it's all about the loser life. We all want to be the winner life, okay? It's a competitive life. We believe that we'll be somebody if we're the winner. John and I were talking about how do you decide what jersey to buy? And do they even put every football player's name on a jersey to sell? I don't think so. How do you get your name on the jersey? That's their goal. That's the goal, is to be the jersey that everybody wants to buy. And then a fourth word of the performance-based society would be to prove our value. And we believe that we will be wanted if we can prove that we're valuable. Everybody wants to feel wanted. Everybody wants to have a feeling of I'm desired, I'm needed. And that if we can prove how valuable we are, we will be wanted because we're able to outperform. We're able to be the best of the best. The world teaches us in little ways that what we do is who we are. What we do is who we are. And I believe that God wants to believe the opposite of us. In Matthew chapter 20, if you have your Bibles online or in print, we have free Bibles in the back. Matthew chapter 20 is a great parable about this type of life, going against the performance-based and seeing people for who they really are and seeing their value in a different way. So Matthew chapter 20, I'm going to start with verse 1. It says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like the landowner who went out early one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay the normal daily wage, and he sent them out to work. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace, and he saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them he would pay them whatever was right at the end of the day." So this is at 9 a.m., first of the day. So they went to work in the vineyard. At noon, 3 hours later, and at 3, 6 hours later, he did the same thing. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he was in town again, and he saw some more people standing around. He asked them, "Why haven't you been working today?" They replied, "Because no one hired us." The landowner told them, "Then go out and join the others in my vineyard." That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and to pay them, beginning with the last workers first. The folks that came on shift at 5 p.m. versus 9 a.m. When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each of them received a full day's wage. When those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed they would receive what? More. But they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to the owner. "Those people only worked 1 hour, and yet you've paid them just as much as you paid us who worked all day in that scorching heat, uphill both ways in the snow." He answered one of them, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? Should you be jealous because I am kind to others?" So Jesus wraps up that parable by saying, "So those who are last now will be first, and then those who are first will be last." This is very opposite of a performance-based society. It's everything different than how we live. I worked at McDonald's in high school and college, and I worked really hard, okay? I clocked in and I clocked out, and it is hard work working fast food. If you've never done it, you should try. You have a greater appreciation for those who do. It's hard on your back, it's hard on your legs, it's hard on your brain, it's hard on your emotions. It is hard work, and You clock in and clock out for that hourly wage. And if some slacker came in for the last hour and got what I got for working the last 9 hours in that heat and in that grease and in that drama, I'm not going to be very happy. Like, I would throw a massive fit. Like, excuse me, I have been here all day. How is this fair? They didn't, but that's not what it's about. It's up to that man. What he paid them was his decision. How he decided to appreciate and show them love was his decision. It doesn't matter what I do or don't do. In Romans chapter 12, verse 16, it says, we should live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people, and don't think you know it all. When I was in second grade, I probably talked a lot, about 7 years old, and we were walking home from the bus stop with some older kids to my babysitter, and the girls turned around and they went, you are a know-it-all. And I went, wow. And I lived until about 6th grade thinking, that was the biggest compliment of my life. They think I know it all. And those of you who know me well go, she is kind of a know-it-all. I thought it was a compliment. It wasn't a compliment. I remember I heard people saying it like as a slam, and I was like, oh my word, those girls didn't think I knew it all. That's everything opposite of this lifestyle that we're going to consider. We want to instead have a life of harmony, okay? Thankfully, that didn't break me down as a second grader. It probably just fueled me for several years of being more knowledgeable and sharing my knowledge and probably one-upping. So the opposite are the key words of a life that's in harmony. And so if you have your follow-along guide, we're going to talk about the 4 words that would explain a life in harmony rather than a life that's living on a performance-based, me-first mindset. So the first word is poor. And by poor, we don't necessarily mean no money, living under a bridge, homeless. We actually mean poor in spirit, which is being humble. Matthew chapter 5 says, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. So being poor means being humble, living with a need for God, that we can't do this all on our own, that we aren't a know-it-all, that we aren't a one-upper. To be blessed and to be poor is to be happy and to be confident and content and living in this harmony. The second key word would be established. We all want to be established. We want to feel established. We want to feel a confidence in that, but that means that we would feel we are included. To be established is to feel that we are included. I've been told that I'm an includer, which I didn't really know what that meant, but I really think it's a gift from God to say we all matter. We are all important. We can establish a life together that's beautiful. John chapter 15, verses 7 and 8, these scriptures are on your follow-along guide if you want to check these out later on this week. It says, if you remain in my words and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything that you want and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father. Being included is very much what our whole opening of our vision and mission statement is, to love God and to love others. How do I establish myself loving God, and how do I establish myself loving others and creating a place of harmony, of being safe? At the very beginning of Waterline, we actually have a couple people here. I won't call them completely out, but they were on our launch team before this church even started, literally walking neighborhoods, praying with us, dreaming with us, working hard with us to get Waterline started. And at the very beginning, we were just really, truly what felt like nobodies. And people would say, where's your church? And we're like, it's in our head. Okay? Talk about feeling like starting from nothing. And we met with the mayor and just kind of said, hey, we have a heart for this community. We want to be leaders in this community. And the key phrase here was, we're not yet leaders, but we want to be. So coming with a poor spirit, coming humble, saying, we're not established here, but we want to be established here. We want to be people that are leading, but we know we have to start clearly from the bottom. Because people always say, well, where's your church? In our head. Where do you meet? In our living room. Well, can I send you a check? Where do I mail it? To my house. Like, it's very, very starting from nothing. Just trusting God that he would lead and guide us in that. Which leads greatly to a third point, which is the third word is surrender. It's not always easy to surrender. It's not always easy to take the bottom, to start from the bottom. But if we do that, we are able to increase in our harmony. And instead of achieving, we're just increasing in what God's doing in our life through this level of surrender. Luke chapter 14 says, "Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table, and when the host sees you, he will come and say, 'Friend, we have a better place for you.' Then you will be honored in front of all the other guests. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Those who humble themselves will be exalted." And the final word that we're going to talk about is to be simple. So many things are so complex, right? Like, it feels like everything in life is harder than it needs to be. And what would happen if we just break it down and simplify it a little bit? Take away the levels of drama, take away the levels of competition, and look for a harmonious life that is more simple or more transparent. And then we become instrumental when we live in harmony. We were thinking about our church and how there's so many ways that you can get involved, and you can write that down on your Connect card if you want to join a team. We would love for you to join a team. A lot of you I know serve in different places. But which part on this team called the church is the most important or the most valuable? Is it Elizabeth with her ability to beautifully lead and to sing? Is it the people in the back who are here for several hours every Sunday working on every different element of light and sound and video and internet? Is it the people throughout the week who are working behind the scenes? Is it maybe the people who made the coffee that you're drinking this morning? We can tell them thank you. You never see them. They're tucked away in a kitchen behind a closed door. They're working, they're giving, they're supporting this ministry, but they're instrumental, and they bring harmony to this place. There's places in your life and in my life where we are also able to bring harmony, where we're able to rise above the one-upper life. We're able to rise above a performance-based place and to create a place of harmony. In our house, we sometimes have a lot of excitement, is a nice way to put drama. We have a 7-year-old girl who thinks she's 17, and we have a 10-year-old boy who thinks he's big and strong and tough and the boss. And then we have John and Danielle, and a dog, who's also a handful, and likes to run away. We have a lot of chaos in our house, and so we're navigating this thing called life and this thing called parenting and this thing called leading and shepherding and guiding our children and strengthening our marriage, and we're trying to figure out how to handle these moments where things are not in harmony, where they're in disarray, where people are arguing, where people are like, oh yeah, well I this, oh yeah, well I that, and we get into this place where especially the kids will have like, I had a bad day because of this, well my day was worse because of this. And we're like, yeah, well, you should have heard about my day. And we're like, but we're not playing these games. We're all just going to calm down and work through this. And I was trying to figure out, how do I stop that cycle of one-upping, and my day was worse, and you should be nice to me because of this, and I'm so stressed out because of this. Oh, yeah, well, I'm stressed out because of this. Oh, I have a headache. Well, so do I. Well, my knee hurts. And it's like, boo, boo, boo. It never ends. And then people start screaming at the other person and yelling and hurting and tearing and breaking down. And I had to figure out, how do I explain to silly little people who do have their own little stresses how to stop this cycle? And I said, okay, you're either being, this is improper grammar, I apologize to those of you who this will bother, a helper or a hurter. Because that makes sense to them. And honestly, it makes sense to me. There's moments where you're either being a helper or you're being a hurter. And so we have to stop in the midst of the chaos and say, stop, 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 stop. Are you being a helper or a hurter? And both of my kids are able to quickly say, they can tell you pretty quickly, oh, I'm being a hurter. Okay, how do we be a helper? Okay, for whatever reason, tension is happening. For whatever reason, people are stressed out. But we have a decision in that moment to make, to decide if we're going to be a helper or if we're going to be a hurter. Oftentimes, a one-upper is either intentionally or unintentionally being a hurter. And sometimes we're that one-upper, and we're unintentionally being the hurter. At the same time, when we're with somebody who is the one-upper and they are hurting, how do we be their helper? How do we show them, you don't have to prove yourself to me. You don't have to tell a bigger and greater story. I love you just the way that you are. Or if they're trying to engage you in that kind of conflict, like my friend was talking about upstairs with this lady coming to his class, that's not where we're at. I'm just going to be a helper. I'm just going to love. So today at the close, I just want you to either scribble down some initials or some names, just some people that maybe you know that you are a hurter to them, and how can you be a helper? and somebody you know who is hurting, who needs you to be a helper. I want you to think about those 2 people. Maybe it's 3 or 4 people. Maybe it is a spouse. Maybe it is a child, a coworker, somebody that you can be love to, that you can be life to, that you can give life to rather than sucking life out of. And if they're sucking life out of you, how do you pour love and life back into them? So I just want you to think about a couple of those names, and the band's going to play for a moment, and I would just think about those people. Maybe just ask the Lord what you want me to do to show them love and to bring life to them. And then I'm going to close this in prayer. God, I pray that you would work in and through each of us, Lord. I pray, God, that the places and the times and the moments where maybe we are a hurter and we are taking life, God, that you would heal those places, that you would heal our own hearts and heal our own lives so that we can be love. I pray, God, that you would just make clear in our hearts and in our minds that that's not your way and that you want us to be love and that you want us to give love. And I pray that you would allow us to do that. And Lord, the people in our lives that maybe are very clear in these moments as we consider one-upping or we consider a performance-based society or the parts of our lives where we just desire to be bigger, to be better, to be more, God, that you would just wipe that away, that you would allow us to sit and to know and have peace and confidence in your love and who you have created us to be, and that you would allow us to be a light and a love and a helper, not a hurter to those around us. I pray that you would strengthen us today, that you would just give us a deep, deep love for you and for your people, for people, Lord, that are far from you, people that are hard to love, that you would give us a real, true, and genuine love for them that would be a clear example, Jesus, of who you are and who you are in our lives. And so we give our lives to you. We give our day to day with you. We give you this week, Lord, that we would have moments to be love and to be helpers. We pray this in your name. Amen.